Hi everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com. Are you ready to finish this awesome bag? I sure am. So in the first segment, we cut out all the pattern pieces and prepped the entire project with our various interfacings and the padding. Last week, I showed you how to craft the interior components of this awesome bag. And so I have that all ready to go. Today we are going to craft the exterior, and that's going to contain all of this wonderful soft squishy foam, which is going to keep our cameras nice and safe. So just a reminder, I have a step-by-step PDF tutorial with all the pattern measurements and very concise written instructions that you can purchase. I'll put the link down below. If you do need the pattern measurements, you can also review that first video, which I will link to parts 1 and 2 down below for you as well. So we're going to jump right in here. For the exterior, one of the first things we need to do is install our side snaps on these side panels. Again, I just have to say how much I love this fabric. It is so, so, so gorgeous. So I have 2 of those side panels, and these snaps are going to be positioned 2 inches down from the top and 3 inches in from the sides. You have a little bit of wiggle room there. If you wanted, you could come 2 inches down and 2.5 inches over, but no more than 3 inches over. And I have these really fabulous heavy duty Dritz snaps, which I found in a big value pack at Joann's. So I have the heavy weight fusible fleece on the back of this. If you are using quilt batting, make sure that you reinforce these snaps with a little piece of interfacing. Generally speaking, the heavy fusible fleece does okay, so I don't really have to worry about those snaps ripping through. So what I'm going to do is measure down 2 inches and come in, I think I'll do 2.5, and we'll see what that looks like. And so I just poke those prongs through, and then the female portion of the snap sits right on top of those prongs, and I just make sure it's even with my finger, and then my trusty hammer is all I use. A couple whacks there, and that snap is set, and then the male portion fits right in there, and then the opposite prong there goes on the opposite side. And so I'm going to measure down 2 and come in 2.5 inches. And the mats are really useful for installing these snaps. If you do not have a gridded mat, then go ahead and measure and mark those with a little pen. Okay, and then I just fold it in half to make sure that those prongs are sitting in there nice. And once I'm confident they are, a few more whacks. And then I'll turn it over and a few more. And then I really like to double check these snaps, and I'll usually whack it a few more times. And the reason you want to make sure the snaps are installed really good, because we will reach a point of no return with this, and if one of the snaps pops out, there's not really a good way to replace that or fix it. So make sure that nothing's pulling apart and you're really happy with that. Okay, and that's what that looks like. And you're going to repeat that for the second panel. And what these snaps do, if you're wondering, is they draw in the sides of this bag so that all that foam hugs the camera equipment. And then if you're really carrying a heavy load or your bag is overloaded, you can always open those snaps and get a more leeway there. But what I find they're useful for is mainly for loading and unloading. When I'm actually carrying the bag and in transit, I like to keep them snapped. And in the tutorial, there might have been the PDF, there might have been slightly different measurements for these snaps, and that is because generally I do not have these large snaps here. These are like 5/8 of an inch across. So if you're working with the smaller snaps, then the 3 inches may be better for you. Side panels are prepped. Then the next thing that we want to work on here is the exterior pockets. So we're going to have one really nice elasticized pocket and one slip pocket for this bag. And so the slip pocket is great for holding like an extra battery pack, the charger, maybe cell phone, the little cords, things like that. And the elasticized pockets are great for extra camera straps, lens caps, and even possibly the phone as well, or like a smaller camera like a GoPro. So there's lots of uses for these pockets, and I do like the variation of the slip and the elastic combo. So for both pockets, you're going to position the fabric right sides facing and then run a row of stitching down that, and you can go ahead and do 5/8 of an inch, and then you're going to turn that fabric around right sides facing, and you can press this at the iron if you like. And while I'm waiting for the iron to heat up, I'm going to go ahead and position the long elasticized pocket right sides facing and run a row of stitching down that so I can iron both at the same time. And when I'm pressing these pockets, I like to get just a little tiny bit of that lining fabric to peep up over the top edge of that fabric so it looks like piping there. And for this long pocket, I'm going to press in a center stitch line there. And for the shorter pocket, I'm going to press that in thirds so that I have nice straight vertical lines that I can divide that pocket. So I have my pockets prepped. Now what I want to do is run one row of stitching very close to the top and then bump down 5/8 of an inch and run a second row of stitching. And then do the same thing for the longer pocket. And that's what the pockets look like. Then you're going to be working with 2 of the exterior front and rear panels. And these are also backed with the fusible fleece. And so you want to position your pockets on these panels. We'll begin with the slip pocket that just sits along the base of that rear exterior panel, and the sides and the base are aligned. And then you're going to divide that by stitching 2 vertical rows through that pocket. You'll definitely want to back stitch a couple times at the top lip of the pocket. And that's what that looks like. And now for the front exterior panel, what you're going to need to do is find center on that panel, and you're going to want to position the center press line that you pressed in your pocket right at center, and then go ahead and put a pin in that to hold that. Then bring those outer edges over to align with the sides and put a pin in that, so that creates that little loop there. Repeat that process for the second side. And so now you have something that looks like that. And then go ahead and fashion a pleat with that little hump. And this is a generous pleat. It's about 1.5 inches across there. And go ahead and put pins in your pleat. And that's what the pocket looks like after you get the pleats in. Then you can go ahead and stitch those pleats in place. And then you're going to need a safety pin to thread your elastic through. Your elastic can measure anywhere from 14 to 15 inches long. It just needs to be very close to the same width as that exterior panel. I will add the extra inch so I can have some overhang to hold that in place. And then you just thread that elastic, which this is 1/4 inch elastic, right through that gusset that we stitched, which was 5/8 of an inch wide. And so a large safety pin just barely fits through there. So if you haven't stitched yours yet, make sure that those lines are fairly straight, or you might have trouble threading your elastic through there. For some reason, I think it's called like a bodkin is an elastic threader. I have one at home and I keep forgetting to bring it in. I'm just so accustomed to using the big safety pin, which works perfectly fine. So once you get to the end, you want to be mindful of that little tail there. You don't want it to get away from you. So once I get close, again, I have that inch overhang there. Then I will hold on to that end, and you can pin it or stitch it. Either way, just make sure that that pocket is lying nice and flat at the side. And so once you stitch through that elastic, then things are much more stable, and you keep the safety pin in the opposite end, and then you can start fiddling with those ruffles until you get the amount of ruffle that you like, and each pocket has enough gathers on it to keep the contents inside. And so I'm going to end up, this elastic is super stretchy, so I'm going to end up, it looks like, with about 2 inches of excess on this side and 3 inches on the other side. And so I'm going to stitch that in place. Your overhang will definitely vary based upon how many gathers you put in this, the quality of your elastic, and the thickness of your fabric is also going to determine how many gathers you end up with. But after you get the elastic secured, then you can remove the pins that you put in the pocket and continue to fuss with those pleats until you're sure. The big thing before you divide it is you just really want to make sure that the pockets are even. And so I feel like that's looking pretty good. All right, and then you can go ahead and stitch right down the center of that exterior pocket to divide that. Same thing, make sure that you back stitch at the top of that pocket, because that becomes a stress point there, and you want that nice and secure. Oh, it's so pretty. It looks really nice with the elastic and the ruffles in there. And now, before you start to assemble the exterior with the modified T method, which we used on the interior, you're going to want to attach your rough piece of your hook and loop tape to the front panel here, which is the one with the elasticized pockets on that. you're going to need an 8-inch piece of that hook and loop tape. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of the hook and loop tape, but for the camera bags it really is ideal. If you wanted an alternative closure, I suggest crafting straps and using buckles as opposed to snaps. But for me, my preference is the hook and loop tape. So for this particular bag, that's what we're going to be using. And so I like to attach the 8-inch rough or hook side to this exterior panel. When you're working with the hook and loop tape, there is a little tiny lip that has no hooks on it. That's what you're going to need to stitch on. And so that takes a little bit of focus. Lucky for me, I have these lines on this bag, and so it's going to make it really easy to keep this straight. And so I'm just going to position that up on the machine and stitch only right on that little skinny edge of the hook. Same thing, back stitch really good at the beginning and the end, because that is definitely a stress point. If for any reason you went off, come back in with a second row. You do not want this hook and loop tape to detach over time with the opening and the closing of the flap, because again, there's really not an easy fix for that. So it's absolutely a-okay to add that second row of stitching on that, and then I'm going to come along the bottom edge and repeat. Okay, so that is nice and secure and attached well. And now we can proceed with the modified T method. So the first step is to attach the sides to that elasticized panel, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Repeat for the second panel with the snap. And now you should have a tri-folding panel. Obviously, make sure the snaps are towards the top of that panel. And then we have our slip pocket panel, which is the rear, and one more panel, which is the base. And so you want to lay the slip pocket panel and the base panel right sides facing, and stitch along the bottom edge there where the raw edge of the pockets are. And then you have a dual folding panel there. This is the base of the bag. The pocket should be facing up here. This would be the rear exterior of the bag. Then position your tri-folding pocket with the elasticized panels facing up on the table, and you're going to center the base of that double panel with the base of that pocket panel that has the elasticized pockets on it. And that's what that looks like. And you're stitching seam to seam. So just back that up on there and start at the seam. And so again, just to give you a better visual, you're stopping at that seam, so you're leaving that 5/8 of an inch unstitched there. A lot of people don't know what I mean by seam to seam, which is different than end to end, and this just happens to show up really good. So I want to take a second for those of you that are new to the T method and just point that out to you. Okay, so now I have my big fat T, and I want to use the newly revised method and attach the base of the side to the side of the base. And so I just fold that over and line everything up. And again, I'm just stitching seam to seam, so I really have to feel for those seams and pay attention. And now I have like my little stage there, and I just have to raise up that remaining wall. And so I line the top there. Make sure that your pocket doesn't accidentally fold in on you, and then stitch from the top to the seam, and repeat that for the remaining sides. Yay, the exterior body is complete. And now you can go ahead and turn that right side out, and you can see this fusible fleece definitely adds the structure that we are lacking for that interior. So what we want to do is open up those side seams just by folding those seams open, and we want to fold that top edge over no more than a ½ inch and get a clip or a pin in each of those corners. Fold over the front and rear edges and get that clip down. Okay, and once you have the top edge clipped well, then you can fit your interior. Go ahead and remove those inserts for a moment and get the interior tucked in there. That's going to take a little bit of fiddling, so what I like to do is push the foam down in there. Get the base situated first. That new foam is going to grip that fusible fleece, and they will just kind of naturally interlock and hold each other in place. But you want to make sure that your top edge is folded over nice on the interior and that those side seams get aligned first. And so I just work one side at a time, get the side seams aligned, and then use those same clips for the exterior to get the side positioned in place. And then I'm going to repeat the same process on the opposite side. And hopefully by now you can see this bag has plenty of stability, lots and lots of padding. Anything you put in here is going to be well protected. Okay, so then now you can apply a little bit more force there, just smoothing things out and pulling to straighten those front and rear panels. And again, the more you smooth and tuck, the more that fabric is absorbed into that interior, and it just kind of sits in the cracks and the crevices there. And then the foam is interlocking with the fleece, and it all works out really nice. Okay, so once you have the interior properly fit, this is what it looks like. Isn't it amazing? We went from that floppy, wobbly interior to this fabulous bag, which stands on its own, lightweight, but lots of nice padding there, and beautiful too. Really, really pretty. So let me just insert these removable dividers so you can have a better idea of how wonderful the interior of this is going to be. It really is just, oh, yummy. Okay, so that's what that's like. We are going to leave these dividers out though while we finish the bag. So the next step in this process for us is crafting the flap, which you have the exterior panel with the fleece, and then the interior of that flap matches the interior of the bag. So just decide which part of your flap is going to hang down over the front there. I don't know, you know, I don't know that it matters. For me, they're pretty equal. But if it did matter for you, say you had a directional print or something, know that this is the bottom of the flap that comes over the bag. And so you wouldn't want your graphic to be upside down. So just position everything right sides facing, and then I do like to fold that in half and angle those corners just a bit there. It just adds some interest to that flap, and I'm not taking off too much there. That's what it looks like. If you cut them both at the same time, they usually work out pretty good. And now I want to stitch down those sides across the angle and across the bottom of that flap. And then you're going to need to turn that flap right side out and give it a good press. And that's what it looks like after you press. Then go ahead and top stitch around all the finished edges on the flap. And then you're going to center the soft side of the hook and loop tape towards that finished edge on the flap there. And you're coming up about a ½ inch from the bottom of that flap. If at all possible, get that nice and straight. The hook and loop tape is kind of difficult to pin through, so I usually just try to hold it and get it up there on the machine. Alright, and that's what that looks like. And every time I install hook and loop tape, somebody suggests just installing it on the interior so you don't see the stitch lines. A couple thoughts on that. The more layers you sew through, including that interfacing, the more secure that hook and loop tape is going to be on there. If you just attached it to the interior, make sure you interface the interior. The second thought on that is I rather like the stitch lines because they act as a guide for me, because then I know where to press to close the bag. So if the stitching bothers you, which with this fabric I can barely even tell where it is, but if it does bother you, you will want to interface the interior because it's not going to stay nice for you over time if you only attach it to the interior. So please do keep that in mind. So now what you need to do is tuck the raw edge of the flap in between the interior and the exterior on the rear side of this bag. That is the side without the hook and loop tape and the slip pockets. And so at this point I usually have to convert to the pins because the clips have a tendency to let that flap shift a bit. So try not to let everything come untucked. That's a little bit tricky. So get one edge of the flap secure first with your pin, and I'm tucking that down in there about 1 inch. And then I get the second edge of the flap secure. And the big thing here is making sure that the flap is centered and then making sure that the flap is not crooked. And again, this fabric is really helpful because I can line up the lines. Then I kind of come into the center of that and pin through the exterior, the flap, and the interior. And then at this point I can get one more pin in between the edge and the center, and I'm feeling with my fingers to make sure that interior fold is even with that exterior fold, and everything looks really good. Now I need to test fit this flap and make sure that I didn't tuck too much inside and the bag won't close. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and snap these side snaps for you so you can see what things are gonna look like. And I'll put back in the dividers. The snaps also offer the bag an awesome shape. Okay, so now it's not looking as monster size. So fun. So the camera with one lens goes on this side, a second camera with a lens can go on this side, or just the bigger lens. It's really fabulous. And then we'll test. Nice. Perfect fit. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, so the next step is to craft the little strap tabs, which the O-rings are going to hang off of. And those are folded just like these straps. And we did that in part 1 to get that all prepped. And so now we're going to sew down the open edge first and then the opposite edge. And then I use the Sewology hardware. These are round O-rings, 1.5 inches. And you're going to need 2 of those. They're really lovely, shiny, good quality. And so just thread those strap tabs through and then go ahead and stitch across that raw edge. And repeat that for the second one. And that's what we have there. And then these get inserted on these sides here in between the snaps. And same thing, you're probably going to tuck that inside about an inch and a half, and you're going to need to swap out to a pin so you can get that through all of those layers. If you let these hang out a little longer, that's going to give you some more length on the strap without having to actually increase the length of the strap. I do suggest that you make sure they're probably the same length on each side, and then you can go ahead and take out those interior dividers, and we're going to attach all of these layers so that they do not shift. And so I like to begin here at the flap, and I just work really slowly and go all the way around the perimeter of the bag. I do come back in with a second row of stitching at those strap tabs, and when I reach the strap tabs on that first round of stitching, I back stitch to reinforce those. But the big thing here is to go nice and slow, and don't be afraid to push all this down if you need to. And then use your underhand to make sure that nothing's shifting and those interior and exterior layers are staying nicely aligned. Alright, I made it all the way around, and then I came back in and added the second row of stitching at the side tabs because those will bear the weight of the strap, and so I want those nice and secure. You may have to just give everything a good tuck again, and then you are officially ready to snap those sides. And install those removable dividers. Yep, really happy with my fabric choices and how this all came together. Okay, and then the strap tabs hang out over the exterior there, and the flap closure just secures with the hook and loop tape. You can tidy up your little pleats there on the pocket. And that's what the exterior looks like. I have the slip pockets here for the lens cap and the battery pack and the extra little cords there. And then these front pockets are perfect for the phone, the camera strap, things like that. So I'm really happy with this. It's gorgeous. Now the last thing I need to do is craft my patchwork strap. Okay, so the strap, you may remember, I am going to incorporate all 3 prints into that. So I'm going to have to join my assorted 6-inch wide strips of fabric to create that patchwork strap. So I'm just going to position those right sides facing and then stitch those together. And then here's what that looks like when it's all joined. And this one ended up measuring, my mat's 24 inches long and it's probably a good 26 inches times 2 there. So it's going to be a really nice long strap for me. Minimum length would be 44 inches long for these. And so now I'm going to craft this like I craft all of my straps. I'm going to press it in half first, long ways. And then I'm going to bring those outer edges inward to meet on that center press line. And that's going to create a little 3-inch wide channel in the center of this strap, which I'm going to then fuse this 3-inch strip of fusible fleece that I pre-cut for this. And then I'll fold everything back over again and give it another good press and stitch down that open edge and then along the opposite edge, and I'll have a really nice finished strap. And then I'll show you how to attach the tri-glide and the swivel fobs so that you can have an adjustable and removable strap for this camera bag, which will allow you to carry it over the shoulder or crossbody with ease. You may even sometimes want to put this camera bag inside a bigger bag and just remove the strap, and then you can go ahead and tuck it in those exterior elasticized pockets. Like say if you're traveling and you want to put it inside your suitcase, if you have one of those big canvas tote bags or leather tote bags that don't have any pockets, this is a great insert there. And you can convert almost any big bag into a camera bag by putting this style of camera bag inside of it minus the strap. So all I have to do now is fuse in my interfacing and I will be ready to stitch the strap. And so that interfacing is shorter than my strap. I didn't know how long this strap was going to be, and so I'm going to just center that in there, and I'll probably trim this strap down a bit. So I have my strap all pressed nice and neat. So first I'm going to stitch down the open edge there, then the opposite edge, then I'm going to add 2 more rows of top stitching to finish that nice. Okay, I have my strap finished nicely with the 4 rows of stitching, and now I'm going to need 1 of the 1.5 inch tri-glide buckles and 2 of the 1.5 inch swivel fobs, and those are both the Sewology brand hardware. And I'm going to begin with the tri-glide or buckle slide. And so remember, my ends do not have interfacing in them. So that's kind of nice because then it minimizes the bulk attaching this hardware, because I'm going to wrap that fabric around that center bar there and then fold that over. So with the fusible fleece, it does get rather thick there, so I do suggest that you leave the interfacing batting fleece out of the end of that strap, and it'll be much easier to attach that tri-glide. So all I've done again is just wrap the fabric around that center bar on the tri-glide and then fold that over, and I'm going to run 2 rows of stitching to secure that. And then I want to thread on one of the swivel fobs, give it a test, make sure it's not defective, and I thread that on the strap. And I bring it down to about center on that strap, and then the remaining raw edge of that strap goes up through the front of that buckle, over that center bar, and out the other side, and that's what allows the strap to be adjustable, and that should slide on there. Initially it may not be with ease, but as you break that in, it will get a little easier to slide on there. Make sure that this looped end is not twisted. And then same thing, there's no interfacing at the end of this strap. So I'm just going to clean that up and then test out the other fob there. And if that functions properly, I can thread that raw edge on and fold that fabric over, and then run 2 rows of stitching across there to attach that. And my strap is complete. So when that is at its shortest setting, it's approximately 24 inches long. And then when I open that all the way up, it's about twice as long. So that would be about 48 inches in total length. But that length was achieved by joining multiple pieces of fabric, so it's definitely going to be long enough for me to wear crossbody. Although with this size camera bag, I almost always wear it on my shoulder. But the nice thing about having the long strap and wearing it on your shoulder is then you have extra padding there. So I do like to make those straps longer rather than shorter, and I want to show you what that looks like. Fabulous. So I hope you enjoyed this series. It was a lot of fun for me. This is going to be my personal camera bag. I got a new camera for Mother's Day last year, and I'm really excited to now be able to carry the new camera with my additional lenses, which I already had. I really enjoy photography, and spring in Virginia is absolutely spectacular, so I will get a lot of use out of this bag. Before we say goodbye, I do want to give you the finished measurements. It's approximately 12 inches across the base there, and then 7 inches deep and 7 inches tall. So again, a really good size bag. And I cannot overemphasize too, the photographers in your life are going to love this. So thank you so much for sewing with me. It was an absolute positive pleasure to share my original design with you. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find value in the content here. If you did enjoy this series and you'd like to see more, please do subscribe to the channel. And then check out the links down below. I will include more information how you can join our Patreon community, as well as put the link to the step-by-step PDF tutorial, which has all the pattern measurements and very concise written instructions. And you can purchase that to supplement this video tutorial. So I will be back next week with another inspired tutorial for you. We are going to be making another planner cover. I love planner covers and organizers, and so I have another fun one for you that I'm going to share. And then the week after that, we'll start something fresh, okay? So again, thank you for being with me today. And as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. Have a beautiful week, everyone.